Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait for another 2 minutes or so for people to join. Happy to see that people are indeed joining and will not wait too much longer. People will catch up as they arrive. Thank you for joining this webinar this morning. This is the agenda for today. The webinar is scheduled for 1 hour, and I will aim to keep it within that time. It should be fine. I will cover some points as I'll introduce myself. I will introduce Arbutus Analytics. I will explore how we can standardize analyses. I'll explain what Arbutus SmartApps are. And then the core of the presentation is basically how to expand your data analysis toolkit. I will continue with some very simple practical examples and then some more practical examples. I will actually take you through the steps to build your own apps within this 1 hour session and also how to share the apps with the team. At the end, I can discuss what the next steps might be for you if you're interested, and you'll have time to take questions. Should we not have time to take questions, I will show you a slide at the end with my email address so you can contact me. Maybe just before we start, the original name for the webinar was Build Your Own Arbutus Smart Apps. But I noticed that when people registered for the webinar, most of them, I think, don't have Arbutus Analytics or might not even know what Arbutus Analytics is. So rather than expanding on that base knowledge, I thought to expand the scope for the webinar and first start explaining what Arbutus Analytics is before we start expanding that particular toolset as well. As for introduction, so my name is Alain Rousseau, and I'm basically passionate about data analysis and GRC tools. What I love most is doing the training and implementation of projects. And my weakness in that regard is that I simply cannot resist a data analysis challenge. And I know there are some of you here in the webinar that can attest to the latter. As for Sepia solutions, the only focus for the company is the GRC software. So either audit management software or data analysis software. And we're therefore very skilled and we do the end-to-end implementations. The company exists since 2010. It's based in Belgium, and we've been working with the IIA in Belgium as a partner or sponsors basically since 2010 as well. So we might have seen each other at a local IIA event. Before going to the content of this particular webinar, I would like to note that there are other webinars scheduled for this year. In September, Neil MacDonald from Technology for Business in the UK, which is kind of a family of a family member, you might say, corporate-wise. We're going to focus on continuous auditing with data analysis. And in light of the ACFE's Fraud Awareness Week, we're doing 2 webinars in November. One is basically developing your own more basic fraud indicators. And if you still got an appetite, the week after that, we can look at more advanced fraud indicators. So it's rather technical, maybe those sessions, but very valuable if you're looking for that type of analysis. So what basically is Arbutus Analytics? Well, first of all, it's desktop software. It's software that sits on the PC and that is designed, built, and used purely for data analysis. That's all, nothing more, nothing less. But it does so very powerfully. There's, for example, very many data sets or we can import. There's no limit to the size, so whether you have 500 records or 5 million records, we can all deal with that, no problem. There's about, I believe, 200 combined commands and functions, purely based for data analysis purposes. And everything you do in the tool in terms of commands is logged. So there's an automatic audit trail that logs everything you do and the results of that command. And typically all the data sources are accessed in a read-only state, so we can read all these data files, many different data formats. I'm not going to go into detail, but we can discuss that if you want later on. There is a set of data connectors, so there's a lot of ERP and other type of packages like ServiceNow, SAP out there that we can drill into and get data out of. And there's also what we call the hub. The hub is software to be installed on a Microsoft server, so it's a server-side software. And on the hub, we typically share resources such as files and data tables and procedures or automated analytics. And because it's centralized and always on, being a server, that's also where we schedule these analysis to come to a sort of continuous monitoring or continuous auditing. Attached to the hub, we have two optional components as well. That's the Results Manager and Web Connect. Both are browser-based, so they're more, let's say, low-key or low-tech for the user. The Results Manager is basically for exception management and follow-up, and Web Connect allows the user to get results of analysis that he doesn't manually go through step by step, but just runs the analysis and gets the data out of it. And technology-wise, finally, we have also a mainframe server, or rather software that can drill into the data of mainframe service. All of this is basically software, and that's half of the package in my mind, because the other half is the ecosystem. What do I mean with ecosystem? Well, Arbutus Analyzer, who built the software, Arbutus Software Incorporated, is located in Canada. And worldwide, they have many different partner companies, such as Sepia Solutions in Belgium and Technology for Business in the UK and others around the world. So we have kind of a family, let's say, of partners. Also, there's a lot of supporting resources out there if you just go and look. For example, we have a very good online learning. There is instructor-led training courses, there's technical support, we publish use cases and videos, there is user groups. Quite often we do local events, like in this case I sometimes do with ACFE, IIA or ISACA, or webinars such as these. So all of that, and that's what I mean, the first half is the software, the second half is basically everything else that comes with it. So you're basically never alone when you're developing or performing data analysis, or when you have questions or get into trouble. That's all good and well, but how does all of that fit in your organization? Well, if we consider Arbutus Analytics here in the center, first of all, we need data. So all these different data sources, these files could be Excel files, MS Access, PDF, text, SAP, or any ODBC source, they all can be connected to. And then it's a question of what you do. So after the import, we might verify the data, whether it's valid. We could enrich the data with other data sources, normalize, consolidate, transfer, and combine with other tables, and so on. So these are basically the technical things we can do. And I repeat that there's about 200 commands and functions to do that. Now, what you do with it, that's basically where you come in. So you might be looking at an analysis of SOD, or segregation of duties. You might be looking for duplicates. You might want to review the master data. You might be looking for missing items, fraud indicators or fraud flags, ghost employees, etc. So the goal there is basically what the user defines it to be. And you're limited by the data and the, I would say, inspiration or imagination. Now you can do an ad hoc analysis, or you can do data discovery, and typically I would say audits, 9 out of 10 would do an ad hoc analysis. They have a certain objective, they get the data, analyze the data, and come to a report or a result. We could augment that by automatic analytics or predefined analytics. As you'll see, that's what we call procedures. Or to top it off, we could turn that around and convert it to continuous or continuous analytics. So basically, we schedule these analytics to run depending on the objective every month, every night, every week, whatever it may be. Now, what do you get out of that? Again, it depends on how you defined the analytic. So you could be emailing exception reports, you could be calculating KPIs. If you do send out emails, we could already attach the documents like Excel files with the exceptions, or you could simply store these files in an output directory of your choice. We can also provide a link to Tableau, so Tableau can directly read the results, or we can help you set up, for example, another visualization tool such as Power BI or Click or any other that can access the data that Arbutus has already processed. Should you wonder, we believe there's a strong difference between things like Tableau and Power BI, which are fantastic tools as a visual layer, and what we do is data analysis. There's a difference. For example, I would happily analyze 5 million records with Arbutus, but I would hesitate to throw those 5 million records in a dashboard. It's simply a different objective. Is this just for audit? No, absolutely not. It certainly fits into the audit scheme, but it can be used for anyone. It could be internal control, financial department, IT doing an ETL, that's extract, transform, and load project. So basically anywhere where you have data, you need to get to the data, transform it, combine it with other data sources, you can use it. I use it for the funniest things. Okay, don't let this slide scare you. This is basically what I'm going to show you with Arbutus. So I'll actually get to the tool right now. There we are. This is Arbutus Analyzer with at the top a menu, a toolbar, and here on the left, the project overview. The project overview contains all the components of this project. In this case, we have 6 tables. Basically an accounts payable type of data set. We have employees, invoice details, invoice headers, and we have here the command log. As I mentioned, everything we do in terms of commands is logged. And if I, for example, open up the, let's say, invoice headers as a table, this is the data. And I understand if you think, oh, this looks like a spreadsheet. Yes, absolutely, because the data is displayed in columns and rows. But unlike a spreadsheet, I cannot enter the data. So I can click on the cell, I can try to type, but it doesn't do anything. It's as if I'm looking through glass. I can't access the data source in a read-write mode, and that's on purpose. This command log, as I mentioned, everything we do is logged. So we already see I've opened up this table, invoice headers, I've got a timestamp and the number of fields that exist in the table. Now, this is not a course, this is not a training of all the features of this analysis tool. This is not even a demo of all those features. I'm focusing this webinar on how you can expand your data analysis toolkit. So there will be a lot of things I am not showing you. And again, that's on purpose. If you have questions afterwards, please come back to me and we'll see how we can handle those. I will show you a couple of features. For example, if I have this amount field, so the total amount of the invoice, I could do a statistics on that and see what happens. Okay, so statistics on amount. And what do we get? Well, we learn that there are 744 records in this data set with a positive amount, which is what I would expect for an invoice. We have no records where the total amount is 0, and we have no records or 0 records with a negative invoice amount. So all, let's say, within the expectations. We have other parameters like averages and ranges and so on. I can also see the lowest amount. It's 1.25, either dollars or euros, whatever the currency is. And the highest amount is 27 million and change. So quite a range in there. Now, everything you see in this log that has this blue underscore line is kind of a hyperlink. So if I would click on this link, it simply brings me back to the table with the filter set so that I can see the transactions, in this case, the records that match the filter. So this is the transaction with the highest amount, basically. I always need to remember to clear the filter if I want to show the whole table again. Let's also look at the created on date. So this is the date the invoice was created in the system. It's not necessarily the invoice date. Here we have the vendor information, so a vendor ID, the reference of the invoice as defined by the vendor, and the date on the invoice again as defined by the vendor. And then maybe the same day, maybe a couple of days later, the invoice was created in our system. So if I again do a statistics on the created on date, I can see that all dates are valid, which is always a good start. I'm not so sure about the average, doesn't really matter to me. I can see the lowest date, or the oldest invoice, you might say, is July 11th, 2021. And you might notice that the most recent date is September 6th, 2023, which is kind of bizarre. It could be a problem in the data. In this case, it's simply because I manufactured the data. It's training data or demo data. So I already created some transactions for the future. So this data set remains, let's say, valid or tasteful for still some time to come. What I want to draw your attention to is the following. So no blanks or invalid dates, that's good. But I also see that there are 295 records or invoices created in the system on a weekend day. Whether or not this is normal, I don't know. At the moment, I don't really care. That's something to investigate. It depends on your business. I just want to illustrate that if indeed, if I click on this, I get back to the table, the filter is already set to weekend. That's a function based on the created on date. Now you can say, yeah, but I don't know what date this is. It's 2021. Well, I can create an additional field, what we call a computed field, which is a thing you might do in a spreadsheet. The big difference is if I add a column like that as an expression, I'm not touching the data source. I am not writing into the data source. I'm simply using a formula, which we call CDOW, is character day of week, you might say. So created on. I want the date to be displayed with 3 letters. Okay. Okay. And then you can see the actual weekday as in a 3-letter abbreviation to illustrate that, yes, this is a weekend day and we can add new fields without touching the data source. Just for your information, so the filter is set. Let's count. We should come to 295, and indeed, the log says we set the filter, we count, we have 295 records that match created on being a weekend day. Just to digress for a moment, I'll clear the filter, and I want to show you a simple chart of all the invoices by vendor. So if I just want to show all the transactions by vendor in a chart, I can see there's some, let's say, deviation in between the vendors. And just out of interest, I'll do a similar thing, but then base it on the vendor and the amount. So also see what's the biggest vendor, where do we get most items from in terms of value. So I'm going to total the amount per vendor and then show them by size again to a chart. What I notice is there's one vendor of which we take a huge amount, so 86 almost and a half million, whereas there are other vendors that don't even show up anymore because there's just a couple of thousand. Or here, this vendor with for him $83 or euros or whatever the currency may be. So there's a huge difference in these vendors. And if I would just click on that, let's say bar chart, again, I'd get to the table with that filter set and I can analyze those particular invoices. Okay, so again, this is digressing a bit, but that's fine. Still a few features which are just very basic in terms of data analysis here with Analyzer is, for example, typically, are there any duplicates? Okay, so are there any duplicates based on this invoice number, which is an internal number? I don't know, let's see. So I'm gonna hit that column, duplicates on invoice number. Yes. Oh, good, yeah. As we see, no duplicates, so that's good, that's perfect. I'll just close this visualization. Yeah. Are there any duplicates based on, for example, the combination of vendor and vendor reference and vendor amount? Okay, this is slightly more complicated, but let's do it anyway. So I'm going to check for duplicates. I want to see duplicates based on the fields vendor, vendor reference, and amount. All right. I'll just put that to screen, i.e. to the command log, and there we are. And yes, indeed, I have apparently 23 duplicates there that I found. And again, if I click on any of these numbers, I get to the data set and I can see that these two records are the same vendor reference, and the same amount. So this is an exact duplicate based on different fields. And note that I don't need to, typically sort it, concatenate fields, etc. I'm just indicating all the different fields that I want to use in the duplicates. Let's get even more advanced and look for duplicates by the same vendor, the same amount, yeah, and the same date, although within the same date, within a week of each other. So exactly the same vendor, exactly the same amount, but near in time of each other. How would I do that? Again, I go to duplicates. I want to see based on the vendor. I want to use the amount, and I want to use the reference date of the vendor. So those are the three fields I want to use for this duplicate check. But the last one, the reference date, I want to be within 7 days of the other. Okay. And then the output goes to fuzzy duplicates, a bit of a fuzzy duplicates testing, if you like. Also, I want to suppress the exact duplicates because those I can say, oh, I already looked at those. I just want to see the ones that are just the fuzzy ones, not the exact duplicates. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we have two. That's interesting. So what we see is the vendor 8316 here on record number 1. The amount 12 euro is the same, but the reference date is a week apart. And the same here for this vendor, a larger invoice, 57,000 on 2 different dates a week, from each other. So this is kind of a fuzzy duplicates check. Again, I didn't need to start coding. I just clicked on the fields that I wanted to analyze. Okay. And finally, let's look at, for example, gaps. Are we missing any records? Are we missing any of these invoices? And this is an internal number, which is or should be sequential. So are there any gaps based on that invoice number? And the answer is no, there are 0 gaps. So I just selected a few of the commands that you can very quickly do with the toolkit here with just the software. And as you can see, this is the command log. Everything we do in all these commands is logged, and where it's applicable, we also get the result of that particular test. Okay. So this was basically this complicated slide. This is basically all that I've shown you. Now, how do you standardize your analysis? It starts by defining the objective. And in this example, the objective is to display how many invoices were created on a weekend day. And I did explain that just a couple of minutes ago, but we're going to go through that again. Why? Because I find a very easy way to build a procedure, which is code in a way, is basically to execute the commands interactively and simply copy paste those commands into a procedure. And this is like cooking shows, like Bake Off or whatever. At the bottom, you can already see the solution. This is where I'll aim at, but I will go through this manually. So how many transactions or invoices were created in a weekend? So again, we go to the table. I did the statistics on created on, and that stores this number 295 of those weekend type of invoices in a variable. Now this is part of the training, but I can show you these variables very easily. Display variables, and I can see that this command stores this value 295 in an internal variable called weekend1. I will not go into all the details, but now I've got all these components to build my own procedure. So here I'm going to right click in the project overview, and I'm going to create a new procedure, and it's going to be called show weekend transactions. I should say show number of, show number of. And if you're thinking, hey, hang on, this is the first time I'm seeing this software and I am already coding in it, well, that is actually part of the objective for today, is how to expand the toolkit. So no, this is not a entry-level type of training, but it shows the point of the exercise. So this is my empty procedure. In the command log, the first command I would need to do is open up the invoice header. So I'll copy that command, copy, paste. There we are. The other command that I did is this statistics. So I'm going to copy that command as well. Copy, paste. And then a command that I've not shown you, but I might want to show you in an actual training is the pause command. It's like showing a pop-up or a dialog box, a very simple dialog box saying we identified invoices created in the weekend. Now the XXX is being replaced by here, this variable weekend1. So if I copy that, copy, and put it in here in these percentage signs, very similar to a DOS command or DOS script, batch script. Basically, this is my procedure. I can then say save and run, and it simply brings up the total. So the total of the 295 invoices in the weekend. So I can close all of that. And now I have my very simple procedure here, and I can simply run it over and over again, yeah, and get the result. And maybe the data source is updated every month or every year, whatever, and I can still go back and run the same procedure, which is now absolutely or even ridiculously simple, but it just illustrates the point that you can do all of the commands there manually, interactively, simply copy paste those instructions into a procedure and very quickly have something you can rerun and indeed share with your team. That is part of this story today. Okay, so this is basically what we have. I set the objective. I went through all the steps manually. I copy pasted those commands from the command log into a procedure, and this is what we have. Now, Arbutus, the software company, has already built for you about 70 default procedures that they call SmartApps. They simply come with Analyzer, they're pre-built and interactive, so they fit basically any table name or data source as long as you get the data into the tool. And they're basically accessible through the menu. I believe they're a perfect starting point for, I call it entry-level analysis. So for you to look at, oh, this is a nice test to do, and I'm looking at one of these 6 categories: accounts payable, we have accounts receivable, general ledger, inventory, fraud and compliance, and fixed assets. So these 6 categories contain a number of predefined tests that you can run. if later you get more advanced or become an expert, again, they can serve as a very good example of the coding underneath the hood. But let's start simple first. Let me show you where these smart apps are. These smart apps are here in Arbutus Smart Apps, and I've got the English version, and I've got the French version there as well. And we have a set in accounts payable, we have a set in accounts receivable, fixed assets, fraud and compliance, and so on. So quite a few tests that if you are doing these types of financial analysis, I'll bet you'll recognize most of them. Okay. The one I would like to show you, for example, is accounts payable, because that's the type of data I have here. And looking for example, invoices without purchase order. Okay, let's try that and see how it works. So I've not done the coding here. They simply come with Analyzer, select the table. So I want this test to run based on invoice headers. Okay. What is the PO field? Well, that's easy. It's called PO. Okay, there we go. If I hit OK, the test will run. And the result is that apparently there are 4 invoices for which I do not have the PO number. Okay, that's fine. Let's have a look. And this is what it does. So it has done this analysis, which fair enough is not too complex. And it has extracted those 4 records for which the PO field is blank, is empty. That's all it does. I mean, it's up to you then, or me in this case, to see, okay, what does that mean? Where is the PO? Shouldn't it be there? Why is it not there? These are questions that, I can't answer based on this defined data field or data set. It's simply missing. That's all I can tell. Sorry, the other one of my favorites, is looking for suspicious words or words you would not expect in the data. For that, let's go to the invoice details for a second. The invoice details, okay, they are the line items of all the different invoices with a product code and a description. And in that description, I might be looking for words that I don't expect in these invoices, or I don't want to see in expense notes, or I don't want to see in orders or whatever. So how does that work? In the apps, smart apps, I go to fraud and compliance, number 2, I believe. Yeah, suspicion keyword matching. Okay. Now it will ask me for the text file in which I defined these suspicious or strange words. Okay, let's have a look. And I created it before. I just called it susp_words, and let's open it for you to see what I'm looking for. I want to look for words as ball, massage, adult, chocolate, flowers, and gift. Yeah. So those are the words, for example, I would want to look at for these invoice details. So we can go, okay, that's the list. I want to run this against the invoice details table now. And I want to use the product description field, not any of these others. These are not relevant. They don't contain the textual details. So that's fine. Let's run. 5 matches. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, we have a mini table football game. All right. We have an exotic massage. All right. Mini punch ball, chocolate dipped strawberries, and an adult entertainment pack. Now I'll leave it up to you, or the auditor in this case, or the financial controller in this case, to review whether those are as expected or things we might want to look at. My point here is just to illustrate that these predefined smart apps right here in the menu are a very good starting point if you have that type of data to work on. That's the story right there. Okay, getting again to the core of the matter is how you can expand your data analysis toolkit. Well, basically, I've gone through 2 of these points already. Well, first of all, you can get started with Arbutus Analytics. You can start accessing all the internal data sources and maybe even some external data sources, and you can perform your tests based on, as I said, about 200 commands and functions that we have to do that. You can then explore these smart apps. There's about 70 smart apps already in the tool, which provide an ideal starting point for interactive analysis without you having to think about the code too much. Okay. And thirdly, which initially was my, let's say, brief for this webinar, is how can you expand even that set of smart apps and basically build your own apps, because your data sources are different from everyone else's. Your objectives may be different from everyone else's. And that is why it's interesting to see how you can expand the menu even further. Not only that, but it will allow you to leverage the team. Yeah. If you have very crafty, very IT-oriented, let's say, people in the team who are very cool with data analysis and who want to code, well, use them. Let them build this library for you, maybe guided by the more experienced people that know what to look for, because there's two different things. There's, in audit, for example, very experienced auditors who exactly know what they want to see, but might not have the technical skills to go and look for them. Whereas quite often I see, let's say, younger auditors or younger employees who are very keen on doing the coding, but don't know what to look for. So if you can combine those two, you can really leverage all the skill sets of the team. Okay, so let's go through that and let's start creating one of those. So I'll first show you a couple of these examples that I've done myself. So here in the apps, for example, I've got the Arbutus resources, and these are very simple. If I click on, for example, the Arbutus community, what happens? The browser simply opens up and guides me to the different LinkedIn user groups, or indeed the online learning platform, of which I'll just sign in and show you the catalog, for example. Oh, sorry, this is the user group. So this is kind of a user forum or knowledge base. We have other resources indeed. That's what I was looking for. The Arbutus Learning, very good platform as well. So if I just log in, I can show you some of these courses in the catalog. There's about 20 or 30 of them, 25, I believe. Yeah. So all these different things, they're modules that you can go through in your own time, in your own place, basically online, and go through all the material. It's fantastic. So I just simply added these, yeah, as a menu, and now they seem to be part of the software. I also did, and they're just as easy to code, is one line each, is help on Arbutus commands, for example, and it probably opens up on a different screen. It basically brings up the help file with all the commands that we have in Arbutus. Again, I'll go through help because I sometimes need help on very different things, on SQL, syntax of SQL, or R, PHP, or even Windows commands, which I use quite often in combination with Analyzer. So if I would click on that, it simply brings me to, again, different screen, the page where I pick up the syntax, for example, or information about the command. So this is not rocket science. This is dead easy. This is very simple, but it is so helpful, I think, to share with your team. If there are auditors in the room, I know there are, I can simply go to the IIA.org website and get information on the IPPF. Yeah. So you could build in a link to your internal website, SharePoint, your charter or whatever, and then you don't need to look for that information later on. So these are very simple ones that I've done before. Let's go through some more practical examples. Yeah. I have apps to get data. Why would I need an app to get data? Because sometimes, depending on the data sources, it's not that easy. Yeah. And get a table from the environmental settings of Windows. Why? Well, because I could. That's the only reason why. So this is the settings you have as a Windows users. So it simply pulls that data in. A very silly example, I grant you that, is just illustrating that all of these data you can get. Yeah. There's another one that I would like to show you because it's rather complicated for starting users, newbie, to do. So if I go to the commands, there's a command that's called directory. Directory creates a table based on your file system. This is the exact syntax. Yeah, but you need to know that. Yeah, so I'll just copy that. It makes my life a bit easier. Yeah, sure. If I would paste this command, it's called directory, and then the file mask. I need to type the file mask. So C, for example, my C drive, Windows, System 32. I want to see all. Yeah. Suppress means I don't want to see the subdirectories, but I do. I want to go through all the subdirectories. Yeah. To then the table name. Let's call it my directory. So you see how, well, difficult it is. It's not rocket science either, but it's not very convenient, is it? Yeah. So this is where somebody with a bit of technical inclination might say, yeah, but you know what? I'll create a smart app for that. Here it is, create table from the file system. Okay, let's click on it. And this is something I'd simply build. It will ask you for the location. So I could indeed go to the system 32, for example, or the program files. Let's go to program files. There we are. What files? I want to see all files. Output to my program files. There we are. Do I want to see all subdirectories? Yes. Do I want to suppress the folder names? No. Do I want to append to another table? No. Do I want computed fields for the file name and file extension? Yes, please. And do I also want a field for the file size in megabytes? Yes, please, because the default would be bytes, and that would be very inconvenient. So let's go. And there it goes away, looks at all the files. Quite a few apparently, maybe not the best directory to get started with, and there we are. So these are all the files in my file system. And again, the directory command works just as well, but you could simply, embed it and make it a bit more user-friendly for your colleagues, okay? Another one of those might be, I've got these program files here, and sometimes they have like a directory in a directory in a directory. But how far does that go? Well, based on actually somebody in the room here today, I thought of another app, let's call it in data cleansing, split text field. Yeah. Do I want to, yeah, okay. So the table I want to use is the my program files. The field I want to split out is the file name, and the delimiter is the backslash. And what it will do, it will go away and compute that there's up to 22 levels of that kind of subdirectories. I'll just remove these. Yeah. And I can add those different levels to the view if I wanted to. Again, not a hugely complicated script or procedure, but very convenient if you just want a part of that into your data file. Okay, so this is basically helping colleagues of mine who might want to have this analysis. Now, how do you start building your apps? How do you do that? I promised I'd show you. Well, I will. First of all, I need a folder to store them in, and I put them in this shared drive. The S drive is a shared drive, and there I've got a folder for today, Sepia Solutions webinar. This is point 1. Okay. Then in Analyzer, I say share, add team folder, because this is a team share. And the name would be just called webinar, for example, webinar. And we're going to go browse. We're going to look for that S drive. And as you can see, I've got quite a few others. I could make site life simpler and just have the one, and it will have subdirectories up there in the menu. This allows me to show you more. So this is my share. I've already got a team share. It took me about 30 seconds to set up. Okay. And how do you then add, basically I've done this. So I set it up the share. And how do you then add procedures? So let's go through the examples. And this is one I've done before. I mean, I've shown you before. Go to the Arbutus group, for example. So I'm going to set up a new procedure. I'm going to call it this. Go to Arbutus group. There we are. And the command, and yes, this might be strange or complex, but basically what it does is, first of all, this run. This is basically the syntax for analyzer to say, whatever's in these double quotes, throw it out to the operating system and let the operating system deal with that. So run is basically run an external command. What a command am I going to do is, I am going to run the DOS command called start. This is the way I've developed it in the past. It works perfectly for me. So I'm going to start, and then you can check out the syntax. This is the window title, and basically I want to get to this link. That's all I want to do. Yeah. So if I save this, I can already check it, run, and again it's on the other window, but there we are. It takes me to this LinkedIn user group. That easy, yeah. But we have to start simple. Let's do one more. New procedure. I'm going to call this procedure, go to Sepia Solutions Events. And the syntax is the same, though the URL is different, of course. Yes. So if I then run that, again, different screen, it brings me to the page where I've announced all the future webinars. Yeah. One more, because it's also so easy, and I really, I'm honest here, this is the one I've done here in the apps in the toolbox. This is the one I used most often. I really do, is simply opening up in Explorer the directory where this project lives. I use that really on a daily basis. Yeah. So I'm gonna create this webinar, create this procedure. Call it open project folder. And the command is different, so that's why I want to share it with you. Copy, paste, so run, and the command is simply start explorer, and this dot means here, start explorer here, okay? And if I run that, open project folder, it might be on a different screen. Yeah, there we are. But it brings me to that folder where this project lives, and I use that all the time. Yeah. So this is a way to share with the whole team, or even if you're alone, this this team share or this folder with all the procedures. Now, yes, this clutters the view. So what you can finally do is in the managed shared folders, rename it. So I'm going to update it and add an underscore to the end. Okay. Then by default, it disappears from the view. It's hidden. That's what the underscore does, but it is still available here. Yeah. So here I still have this webinar. I still have all of these things like the events. Yeah. Still takes me to the events, but it's hidden, it's clean, and everyone can use it. It's, well, I think it's fantastic. Yeah. So I promised to show you how to build your own tools, your own expanded procedure. I think I've done that. I've shown you how to set it up very quickly. I grant you that. Yeah. What else can we do if you're interested? Well, we can have an online meeting. Yeah. We can see what works for you, what your situation is, what your objectives are. We can see about setting up a workshop together, and we can look forward to a full implementation based on your situation and objectives. I'm not going to focus on that too much here right now. This is not a sales call. It's just an illustration of what the next steps might be. Are there any questions? So I give you time to type, but basically by way of recap, I've introduced myself and Sepia Solutions. I have illustrated what Arbutus Analyzer or Arbutus Analytics is. I've went through some standard analyses and I explained how you can standardize them. We spent some time with the Arbutus SmartApps, that are those 70 predefined apps already coming with the tool. And I went beyond that and I started showing you how you can expand your own library and basically get the team basically to leverage the skill set of the team. And some, yes, very simple practical examples, but we need to start somewhere and we have, well, a limited amount of time. So yes, are there any questions or comments? What's the basis of the language for the procedures is basically, what's the term again? Proprietary. So the coding is basically proprietary syntax based on the command. So it's not like Visual Basic or anything like C or Java or .NET, nothing like that. Okay, thanks for the compliment. Okay, I think that's it for the questions right now. Take it with you. Remember, there are more webinars later this year, continuous auditing, continuous monitoring, and then fraud indicators. And then it just remains for me to thank you for your time. I really, really hope you found this useful or insightful. And please do not hesitate to reach out with any type of question or feedback, or indeed suggestions for future webinars. Is there anything in particular that you would like to see or focus on that will give me inspiration to plan further webinars? That's it for me. I'm actually pretty happy that we kept it within 1 hour as scheduled. So again, thank you very much, and I hope to see you in one of the future webinars. Thank you so much. Bye to you all.